Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I feel like it's so important, the concept of boundaries in healing as well, because you need to make choices about what you allow into your home, the things that you choose to watch, the ways that you choose to spend your time. There's a lot of different expressions of boundaries. Like, I'm not responsible for how my kids react to things. I'm responsible to train them up to be independent, strong individuals that eventually will launch out into the world. I'm not training them to be dependent on me for the rest of their lives, for example. And that's one expression of boundaries as well. And that's kind of the core message. I'm not going to do for someone else what they can do for themselves.
Welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe, where we pour positive back into your day, sharing stories from real people who have made it through some real struggles, but were able to restore their health, hope, and peace. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and as a certified coach, I'm here to guide you to be your best self-advocate, to help you restore your health, ignite your faith, and conquer those fears while you navigate your own healing journey so you can eventually exchange your dis-ease for durability. If you're looking for hope and encouragement to live a life you love, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and today we're talking, among some other things, about boundaries. My friend Nicole Ceballos is with us today, and she brings 16 years of missionary experience to the table and now enjoys helping to serve other missionaries and those who are in Christian service to help them wrestle with their own questions or just, be a service to the person who's providing service and to help them grow in their relationship with Jesus Christ. As you're serving others in a church or on the missions field, sometimes you need somebody to serve you. Nicole is a great person for just that. In addition to her missionary experience, Nicole is a fighter and brings a lot of authentic compassion to those that she serves because she's weathered a lot of her own storms related to chronic illness and some mental health struggles, and even working through her own ministry burnout. Through all those difficult circumstances, Nicole brings a passion for systems and organizing and all the pieces needed to just getting things done. You're going to enjoy hearing from Nicole, so let's dive in. Welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and I'm really excited today to have Nicole Ceballos with us. She and I have had multiple conversations. She's just a delight. You're going to really enjoy learning from her and being encouraged from her. So Nicole, thanks for being on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted.
You and I have had many chances to speak about all the different things that you're doing in your work as well as in your ministry. And I know you've got an interesting family. Your husband's from Guadalajara, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yes,
and you've
that's
got
correct.
a couple of beautiful children. And I know that you have a passion for helping people through some ministry burnout. We talked about some health and chronic illness and even some chronic mental health kind of things that have also been in your path. So our listeners would love to be encouraged by you today. So why don't you just kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey started, I'm from a big family, a family of 10, and I was homeschooled, and I had a missions experience when I was 15 and just felt God's call to go on the mission field. So I actually graduated early and went to live full time on the mission field at 16 years old and just had an amazing experience in missions. I was in full-time missions for 16 years, met my husband, who's from Guadalajara, and we started a family and just grew in ministry. When I talk about, burnout, I will say that, especially when you're working full time in ministry and there's just so much need. And if you don't really know about the concept of boundaries, things like that, you can, I would hear Bible passages that talked about like, you always have to go the extra mile, you have to give that extra. If you have your clothes, give it to someone else. And that was kind of the messaging in the environments that I was in. And so I just felt like I kept, pushing and pushing harder and got to a place of burnout. And so I think, when I look back, I would say that, there were definitely key moments in my journey where God just kind of opened up an understanding and, led me into a path of healing, I guess you could say. And I remember one of the first things on that journey was reading the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud, one of my favorites. It was life-changing. And I definitely started to put that into practice and just really changing perspective from a victim, I guess you could say, to like, oh, okay, I'm a participant in this and I have choices. I think there was so much in my journey where I just felt very powerless and just realizing, actually I do have choices. um, I guess I'm a free agent, to make changes and to chart a path forward with my health stuff. Almost like, why is this happening to me? Like feeling resentful towards my body of like, why are you betraying me? I have a couple different autoimmune conditions. I've also had Lyme and struggled with that for a while. I got malaria in one of my trips to Africa, and it was just a lot of health issues where I said, why is this happening to me? And when I think about my journey, I think one thing is that I've grown in and that I am passionate about helping others in is to really be honest about what you're experiencing and to see reality as it is. I think a lot of times I would minimize how something was affecting me or how something was like the reality of a situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so learning to see things clearly and then to have the courage to take right action. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram, but I'm a 9 on the Enneagram. And so always looking to keep the peace and, like internal peace and external peace and, people pleasing tendencies of like, okay, if I can just keep everyone happy, everything is going to be okay. And that's not how it works.
Mhm.
And so I think, yeah, all of those things is just learning to see things clearly, to realize that, God is with me and God is giving me the tools to respond rightly in different situations, and that I have a choice and that I can make choices to get better, to heal, to forgive, to have boundaries, and all the different things. So I know I went kind of in a lot of different directions, but that kind of is overall my story.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. There's so many things in there, and I can't wait to dive into it. And I completely can get to the people pleaser. I completely understand that everyone else is happy except you when you're one of those kind of
Yes.
people, right? You're making
Yes.
everyone happy, but at your own expense, usually, if you're one of those people. I'm not familiar with the Enneagram that you mentioned, so we may have to touch on that before we're done here as well. You mentioned a few different things you had on autoimmune, and I'm very curious about that because that's certainly something I have a lot of experience as well. So I'm always interested to find out how people have navigated that, how they learned about it. And with both Lyme and malaria, um, those are some significant systemic kinds of problems that
Mhm.
affect you. Lyme's for one being known as the great mimicking disease because
Yep.
it can present itself like so many different kinds of diseases. So
Mhm.
can you tell us a little bit about how you discovered what you had and then how you healed through it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, there's a couple different directions there because there's a couple different things.
Yeah, sure.
So with Lyme, for example, so I was going through a season, and I think my, I talk about healing from, with mental health, and then personally, it was a lot of anxiety, and then also with, burnout, things like that. I think there was a big emotional component with my health, like
Mm.
my emotions affecting my health and the people pleasing even and stuffing my own reactions to things. I think those things compounded in my health as well. But I was, yeah, diagnosed, well, actually first with Hashimoto's, hypothyroid disease. And that started, it was actually triggered by the birth of my second child.
Mm.
And so it kind of started off as like postpartum hypothyroid, but then was diagnosed as Hashimoto's. And I actually have siblings that have it as well. So it kind of runs in the family, I guess you could
Okay,
say.
sure.
But yeah, the way that that was diagnosed was just, I was just so exhausted. And I just remember like I could barely make it through the day. And I had, 2 kids, a 2-year-old and a newborn, and just really struggling. And thankfully, since it does run in the family, my mom told me, she's like, you should get your blood tested. And, my numbers came back so out of range. The doctor's like, I don't even know how you're functioning right now. And I was like, I don't either.
That's a really good point. Then I love that your mom had that insight because I think a lot of moms, especially with little ones, they think, well, it's just because I have little ones.
Oh
But
yeah,
getting that
absolutely.
blood test was a really great idea because it can kind of
Mhm.
validate that it's not just the little kids and the fact that you're getting less sleep. There's actually something systemic also happening.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember when I got the results back, I actually felt relieved. And so I
Sure.
told my husband, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is what it is." And the reason I felt relieved is because I wasn't just going crazy, like it was
Yeah.
like, okay, there's a valid medical reason for why I'm feeling this way.
Yes. Right.
And I think that's a great thing because I could, like in your gut, when you sense like, okay, there's something that's not quite right here. And so I was grateful to have that kind of action item, I guess you could say, of like, okay, well, let me just go and get this tested and then we can go from there. And um, so that was one, and that's been under, control for a while just with medication, but then also thankfully that has been like I've been able to over time through, different healing modalities able to kind of lower my
Mm.
dosage and lower kind of the threshold, I guess you could say.
Sure. So are
Um,
you doing more of that with diet and environmental kind of thing?
yeah, diet, environmental. So when we lived in Mexico, we lived in a lot of different houses, and there was a lot of mold toxicity in different places. So I know that contributed to it. And then also just, stress. And I mean, that was the time where I was kind of hitting a wall as far as feeling burned out as well. And so I think one is just more as far as the healing journey in that specifically is just learning about my body and
Mm.
learning how I respond, trying different diets. I will say it is exhausting, especially um, when you're not used to kind of taking care of yourself, to be forced to try things out, to do research. I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, I just wish someone would tell me what to do to fix this. And that answer didn't come, and especially and I would think about because I would hear about like naturopathic doctors and different things like that. And I was like, oh, I could, but in Mexico, I didn't really have access to that kind of care. And so I felt very I think overwhelmed, but I was like, okay, just one step at a time, And so I think it's actually been, I mean, that was almost 9 years ago. And
Oh, wow.
so I feel like it's been very much a journey of one healing emotionally, having better rhythms in life in general, taking time to figure out what it is that recharges me and gives me energy. Also, kind of learning my triggers in a way of like, okay, what are unhealthy behaviors when I'm falling into unhealthy patterns that are going to lead me to not feel well? And then
Mm.
to kind of stop those and say, no, okay, I'm going to reset. And like, for example, one for me, um, when I start to avoid processing things and really paying
Mm.
attention, like if I'm noticing that I'm kind of binge reading or
Mhm.
binge watching or not going to bed on time, like those for me are like red flags. Like, okay, there's something you're avoiding. And then I kind of can say, okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do some journaling. I'm going to take a hike. And this is where I love the Enneagram because based on your personality, it gives suggestions for how to best kind of feel grounded. And so for me, it's getting into my body as a nine. And so I'm like, okay, I gotta do something fitness related. I've got to go take a hike. I've got to like get out of my head and into my body. And so that's one example about the Hashimoto's. And of course, I'll still have flare-ups,
Mhm.
where I feel really fatigued or I feel
Mhm.
like my autoimmune system is not quite strong, and I just need to
Mhm.
kind of get some extra support of eating extra nourishing foods and getting more sleep and things like that. So I feel like I've got
Yeah.
kind of a rhythm now.
Yeah.
And then
Well, I
with
think
Lyme, actually, or go
when
ahead.
it comes to health, I think we need those reset types of tools. So
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a water fast or a juice fast, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
getting into a cycle of, okay, I know that I kind of got into bad habits. I'm gonna reinstate that walk that I used
Yeah.
to do every day. And I think people feel, I don't know, maybe I'll speak just for myself. I'm either all on or I'm all off. And people,
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to really embrace the fact that you're never going to be all perfect and you're never going to be all horrible. That it's a balance and it's a constant iterative process,
Mm-hmm.
a circular cycle
Yeah.
of, I'm doing well. Okay, I'm not doing well. Let's reset. I'm doing well. I'm not doing well. Let's reset.
Hmm.
And so did you ever try fasting in that modality to clear things out and reset?
I've had some, I guess you could say, interesting relationship with fasting. I did a lot of fasting when I was probably in my early 20s, but then I also was kind of struggling, which I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I would say an eating disorder.
Okay,
And so it kind of had some interesting connotations for me. And then with
got
my
it.
autoimmune issues, I had a hard time fasting food.
Mm.
Um, because of how my body responded. And so I'll usually do other kinds of fasts,
Sure. Yeah.
like with social media or TV
Yeah.
um,
We'd call that a
or
partial fast of some sort.
yes,
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
partial fast. But I feel like I'm actually, so it's interesting that you say that because I have been really interested in getting into that more. I was playing around with intermittent fasting and I did feel good on that. And so I want to like move in that direction. I have done a couple, like a juice fast type thing, but just for like 24 hours, or 48
Sure.
hours or something
Sure.
like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a journey, and like you were saying, when we are seeking healing modalities, it
Mhm.
can be exhausting because it's so personal, and
Yes.
there's everybody's
Mhm.
body is so different and unique, and you can't just find that recipe that's perfect for fixing
Mhm.
fill in the blank. So, it's really kind of something you just have to do a lot of trial and error, and so experimenting with a 24-hour fast, whether it's water or juice or a partial
Mhm.
fast, and just saying, okay, I'm a little overly anxious right now. I'm just going to shut off the news and the
Mhm.
media for 24 hours and see how I
Yeah.
feel tomorrow. I mean, the world's not going to end. And if it does, you'll miss all of the really, anxious stuff. And you can just, dive back into it tomorrow. So I think sometimes those types of partial fasts can be really good
Yeah.
for our mental resets.
Yeah. And what I find too for resets, I'll kind of take some time just in because like silence and solitude has been a really powerful gift for me on my healing journey as well, and just in my relationship with God. And it was something that I wasn't familiar with. I hadn't been exposed to kind of more liturgical practices until later on, probably just 5 or 6 years ago was when I really was like introduced to that whole concept. And but what I'll do, yeah, if I kind of start to see the red flags, I'll kind of take some time to journal a little bit and just almost like ask my soul, like, what
Mm.
is the support that you need? And God is so gracious, will usually give me a couple like sometimes it'll be like, okay, reach out and, speak to this person to help process, or I'll look along my bookshelf and I'll kind of see, is there any titles that kind of just like call to me, you know what I mean, that like
Mhm.
draw me in. And um, different things like that, where I'll usually identify like, okay, 2 or 3 steps, that I'm going to do in the next week or two. And I find that that's been really helpful for me to have some like actionable, concrete things, and then also just being gentle with myself and gentle with the people around me. A
Uh-huh.
lot of times I think I can, yeah, minimize the impact that certain things have on me emotionally, a hard conversation, or even, I had a visit to the dentist recently that was, a little bit, what do you call it? It was a little bit more invasive than I was expecting it to be. And just like, hey, my body just needs a minute to like process that, or things like
Sure.
that. So to just be like gentle and give time and, um, trust in the process, trust that God is doing something and that he has good plans and that he's going to lead, in
Yeah.
that journey.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's yeah, and you don't normally expect a dentist appointment to give you that physical reaction, but like you said, if that's where your body's feeling, just embrace that and love that, and
Mhm.
let your body have a minute to just adapt to what it
Mhm.
just experienced. Okay, well, I'm curious a little bit to hear about this malaria. And I'm curious because I think so many of us, specifically in the USA, most of us are um, vaccinated for this, or
Mhm.
if you're traveling, for sure you will be. And yet, not very many people are familiar with it. They maybe are familiar with it by name, but they don't really know what malaria is by experience. So, help
Mhm.
us understand what that was like.
Well, and maybe I blocked out blocked out some of what it was like. But so it actually happened when I was I was 16 and had gone on this mission trip to Cameroon. And part of our mission was to go into kind of the backcountry and hike to remote villages and show the Jesus film.
Mm.
And so we would go and we had, tents that we would put up in these different places. But there were a lot of mosquitoes and we actually didn't have great nutrition either. One of the rural villages we were in, we didn't really have a lot of access to food. We brought food in, but then a lot of it got moldy. And so I feel like that probably didn't help our immune systems either. We were all kind of worn down from all the hiking and the different environment. And several of us actually got started to get really, really sick. There was a team of, I can't remember exactly how many we were, probably 10 to 15, youth. And I do remember it was about, um, yeah, it was, I think probably 36 hours that I was like really, really sick. And we got hospitalized and had an IV and they gave us medication for the malaria. And thankfully, in my case, they said they caught it soon enough that they were able to, like, there was no signs of it in my system anymore. Although I cannot give blood. That is one thing they said, you can never donate blood. But
Okay.
I remember, so it was a situation where the area wasn't super safe. So we were in tents in a room and actually kind of locked in at night, like we couldn't get out. And so my symptoms with the malaria were like kind of hallucinating and like really bad diarrhea and vomiting and things like that. So we were
Mm.
locked in this room and couldn't go anywhere. So we had like coffee cans
Oh
as
no.
bathrooms. It was like, this is why I blocked it out. It was such a horrible experience. Um, and there were about, I think, four of us that ended up getting so sick. And after the first day, the leaders of the team said, this is really bad. We need to get you to a hospital. So they hospitalized us, and we were in the hospital for probably around 24 hours. And they gave us some medicine in an IV, and I've never had any issues from that since. And so I believe it was a combination of the timing that they caught it, the medication, God's providence, and his healing. Um, a combination of those things but I'm just so grateful that I never had any kind of recurring issues with it. Because I do have a friend who it got into a system and then it can get similar to Lyme. Like there can be things that trigger it in your system and he would have recurring issues with it. So
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow.
that was
Well,
TMI, but
no, my goodness. No, I mean, that's just, I mean, we talk about all kinds of things here on Sunshine Cafe. It's all good. It's part of, things go in, things come out. It's just part of the circular process that we all deal with. But what kinds of
well,
things were
so
going on with limes?
Well, it was so I was diagnosed with it when we moved, as part of our story, we moved to Montana for a year for my husband to get trained as an outdoor guide. And we were living in dorms in this YWAM campus, Youth of the Mission, the organization we worked with. And yeah, I was just experiencing this chronic fatigue. I thought it was thyroid related because I was already in treatment for thyroid and it just everything was fine on my levels. And it was that season of burnout too. And I was like, I don't know if it's just from being exhausted or if it's something else. So I did connect with a friend who I just paid for the testing, but she donated some coaching and she told me, she said, yeah, you came back positive for Lyme. And so I did several months of different protocols and natural antibiotics and different things like that. And I did see improvement and I learned a lot about like just how the body functions and diet and things that I was sensitive to. So that was a very enlightening experience. But after it's probably 5 or 6 months into the treatment and went on my first official silence and solitude retreat. I had been starting my practice of 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and I planned my first retreat and went into the mountains in Montana, this beautiful cabin that a friend let me borrow and had this time of prayer and worship and just journaling. And I remember feeling so like, am I doing this right? Just all this kind of insecurity and all of that. And there was just this time where I put on this playlist and I was just on my knees and praying. And I felt just like this, the Holy Spirit just came and it just felt like this warm, almost like liquid, like all in my body. And I felt like God told me, I just healed you from Lyme. And it was just so amazing. And of course, then it was like, I think if something like that happens, then there's this moment afterwards where you're like, okay, so do I stop the treatment? Do I keep going like
Was
this?
that real? Did that really happen?
Did that really happen? Is it like, I know something happened, but is that?
Yeah.
And so I definitely, so I reached out to like my health coach as well. And I was like, okay, this is what happened. I truly believe that God healed me, but now what do I do? And so she said, well, here's what you can do. She's like, if you want to, you can just kind of continue on for a few days and just see how you feel. And it was interesting because I continued the protocol that I was doing for a few days and I felt awful, like
Mm.
awful. And I was like, I feel like this is not what my body needs right now. Like I really think that I just don't need this anymore. So I kind of discontinued the whole protocol that I was doing. Um, it's just God's grace. Like he healed me from Lyme and I've never had any issues since. And so that's my miracle story.
Oh, I love that story. Yeah, I'm so glad we got to that because, yeah, that's amazing. We don't, I think that there's probably those kinds of miracle stories happening all over the place, but
Yeah,
it's just, we don't get a chance to hear them.
yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and it's so encouraging to hear that God still does do miracles like that. So hooray. Thank you,
Absolutely.
God.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so encouraging. And then it's so funny too, because I'm like, God is so funny, of like, yeah, one of my health struggles, he chose to heal that way. And then there's others where it's just been this ongoing, and it's like, okay, God, you choose how and when and who you heal, and I trust you in that. But it's just funny to me. I'm like, I wonder how he makes decisions sometimes.
I know, right? I always think about the guy that was sitting by the pool of Siloam, right? In
Yes.
the Bible, that Jesus went
Yeah.
over and healed him. It's like, what are the people around him must have thought? Must have been
Yeah.
like, what about me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And God's got a purpose in all of it. And but I'm very grateful that he chose to heal me in that way of that specific condition. So
Yeah. And I am too. I'm so happy that God gave you that gift. What a gift. Well,
yes, absolutely. So there you go. I was like,
I love
I
it.
didn't do that
Yeah, I love it. But I think it's
Very-
interesting that throughout the thread of your journey, a lot of what the message comes back to is kind of being your own good advocate, an advocate for
Mhm.
yourself,
Yeah.
to find out the things that are going to work for you, to listen to your body when you come back from a dentist appointment that was a little more invasive than you expected, to give yourself the time, the space, to
Mhm.
set up yourself time for a walk when you need it, to listen to your body and to be aware of when you're feeling a little overly anxious. That's an
Absolutely.
important piece of our mental, physical, emotional health. You had talked about a couple of books from Henry Cloud,
Mhm.
and one of them was a major turning point for me as well, and that's boundaries.
Oh my gosh,
So
the best.
I love that. I love that concept, and I think it's such an important concept, especially for ladies. Us ladies, we sometimes have a really hard time drawing healthy boundaries. So
Mhm.
could you, just for the benefit of our listeners, tell us a little bit about what that book's about, what boundaries are all about, and why they're so important?
Yeah. Well, boundaries, that's all about having a clear view and vision of what belongs to me and what belongs to someone else.
Mm.
And this can be in the realm of emotional. An example is like you can say, "Oh, he made me angry." It's like, no, actually, someone can't make you feel something. You're responsible. You can have a reaction to something, but like you choose how you react. And I think people pleasers especially struggle with this because they feel like, oh, I'm responsible for your emotions. So
Mm.
the things that I do, I need to kind of, um, create a certain outcome or things like that. So or like that I'm responsible for someone else's emotions or someone else's actions. It's like, no, you don't make anyone else do anything. We're all adults and we all get to choose and no one can make you do anything. You have that power. So he gives the example of a fence. So like a fence around your life, around your heart. But there is a fence, like it's not just open to any intruder or anyone that wants to come in, but it has a door. So you have choices about who and what you let into your life, into your space, and that there are some times where there are really unhealthy patterns that you have a responsibility to own. Of okay, yeah, there are things that are on your plate, I guess you could say, or in your ownership, and then to let go of the things that that other people are responsible for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it makes a ton of sense to me because I've kind of been through that process. I remember reading that book back probably in my college days, and this whole concept that no, he or she can't make you feel anything. I have a choice whether I let them make me
Mm-hmm.
feel in a particular
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
I can choose to be offended by something, or I can choose to be upset by something, or I can choose not to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I am responsible for my own response,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have to empower this other person, a
Yeah.
boss, a family member, and an ex relationship person. I don't have to empower them and give their words more power
Yeah.
than I want to.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
obviously, when you've got a broken relationship with a child or a parent, first of all, of course, it's heartbreaking. But there's
Mhm.
a certain point where you have to almost say, okay, in order to heal this relationship, I need to have a good boundary.
Yeah.
And that boundary, like that fence that you were just talking about, I'm going to let this person come so far, but I'm not
Hmm.
going to let them take me over. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to let them terrorize me.
Yes.
There's going to be at least an arm's length here where I'm not going to allow it. I just won't allow it. I'm going to be Teflon. It's
Yes.
like my
Let it
analogy, like
slide.
let it slide right off like that fried egg. So I think that's a really important message for people,
Mhm.
especially in today's world. I think, I don't know, my opinion, my thoughts on this, I think that we are, as a culture, so concerned with offending somebody
Mhm. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and to understand that yes, somebody can say something pretty offensive, but you have the opportunity whether or not you're going to let that shut you down or
Hmm.
strengthen you.
Yeah, you can have a choice also about if you choose to put yourself in those positions. Like if there is someone that's consistently offending you, you actually don't have to be in relationship with that person or expose yourself to that content.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I think we jump so quickly to filling in the blanks for
Yeah.
why somebody's saying what they say that we
Mhm.
almost make it offensive when the intention behind what they said was not that at all, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I feel like it's so important, the concept of boundaries in healing as well, because you need to make choices about what you allow into your home, the things that you choose to watch, the ways that you choose to spend your time. Um, there's a lot of different expressions of boundaries. And he's actually, I mean, Henry Cloud, for anyone listening that's interested in exploring more, he actually went to write on several books that like boundaries in marriage, boundaries as parents, boundaries for teens, and things like that. So, a lot of it, even in parenting, has helped me realizing like, oh, I'm not responsible for like how my kids react to things. Like I'm responsible to train them up to be independent, strong individuals that eventually will launch out into the world. I'm not training them to be dependent on me for the rest of their lives, for example. And that's one expression of boundaries as well. And that's kind of the core message. I'm not going to do for someone else what they can do for themselves.
Well, that's a really wise word. I love that, Nicole. Yeah, when we first started giving our son a little bit more freedom with
Mm-hmm.
technology, we sat down, had a very serious conversation with him. He knew what a firewall was.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, honey, you have to be your own firewall. We can't
Yeah.
protect you from images, things that are going to pop up in your search that you didn't intend to pop up in your search because
Yeah.
of the internet and the broken world we live in. So you have to be the one that shuts that off and then keeps that firewall and that protection around your own heart and your mind and saves your heart and mind for that future wife that
Yeah.
that you are the gift for that future wife that's going to
Mm-hmm.
marry you. You have to protect that. And it is a gift that you have to protect. And so it is, I think, educating and teaching even our kids, like you said, how to create good boundaries and how to be mindful, how to protect those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even in my own case, I kind of know where my weak spots are, you know,
Mhm.
and it's like, okay, how can I best set up myself and our family for success, you know? And that's a whole other conversation,
Yeah.
like talking about creating habits and your environment and different things like that. But I think it's just so important to think about, hey, what is the outcome that we're looking for and how can we support that? How can I support that as an individual and how can we support that as a family to kind of get to the outcome that we're looking for, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just so wonderful. I'm going to make sure that we put some links in our show notes here so people can see those book links. And tell us a little bit about how could people reach out to you? How could people connect with you if they wanted to know more about Nicole Ceballos?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the fun things that I'm doing right now, I did as part of my journey, I did get trained in the Enneagram and also as a spiritual director. And so the way that I'm out there in the world right now, people can find me at directionwithnicole.com. And I have a website and it talks about my spiritual direction practice. I also work as a project manager, but the way people can find me is as a spiritual director. And the heart behind that is, one of my passions is to really minister to ministry leaders that are experiencing burnout, that are experiencing maybe some doubts even. I remember one time in my spiritual walk that I kind of was like, hey, does prayer even work? Is God for me? Just experiencing these, it was just a really dark season and burnout and just kind of feeling cynical,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
And I
just,
think every Christian goes through that. I mean,
yeah,
we all wrestle with that. And I think the fallacy or the false message is that God's not okay with that. And he
yeah,
is okay with that. And it's up to us to wrestle with those doubts and to
yes,
come to a place of peace and to pray through that. But yeah, I think everybody deals with those doubts, whether you're an early Christian or you're long on in your relationship or you've been a missionary for years.
yeah.
You're going to deal with some of those.
Well, and I think it's especially hard, I think, for ministry leaders to feel free to process those things because it's
Mm.
almost like there are situations that I experienced and I've heard from other people too. If you voice some of those concerns to people, there's like an admonition, just pray harder, or different things like that, or you don't have enough faith to experience those doubts. And so my heart is to provide a space where there can be just like complete honesty.
Mm.
My firm belief is that if you're not honest about the reality of what you're experiencing and just like own it, like, hey, this is how I feel, God can meet you in that. But if you're in denial about it and you avoid it, then how can God's grace touch that part of you?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so I provide, it's usually like a monthly hour-long session, just connecting and listening and helping people discern the invitations of God and kind of asking questions to help them go deeper and understand kind of their inner landscape, I guess is a way that you could put it, and inviting God into that. And, what does God say about this? And just, it really, for me, it provides like a very unique environment. It's not something, it's very different from like counseling, for example, where you go in with kind of like, okay, here's our treatment plan. It's
Mhm.
more Holy Spirit directed. And it's just a way that I find it's very life-giving
Yeah.
to have that space where there's no agenda. The Holy Spirit sets the agenda. A lot of times people will come in and say, hey, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about today. And I said, that's perfect. Let's just start, laying out stones, what's been going on, and just kind of discerning God's movement. And I see a spiritual director in myself, and I'm always so blessed and touched by what God shows me in those times. So that's how people can find me.
Wonderful. Well, I'll just, on behalf of everybody out there that you get to work with, I just want to say thank you because I think it's a real need that anyone in ministry could have this resource to reach out to just, like you said, our ministry people are so taxed to minister to others, but on occasion they need someone to minister to them. So that's a beautiful service that you're offering and allowing people a chance to just come in and be real and, wrestle with some of those thoughts and concerns. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Nicole, thank you so much for just being with us today and sharing your journey, the highs and lows, the health, and all the different things that have come into your world. And there's so many things here we could dive into, so we'll have to have you back maybe on a future show. But thank you so much for your time and just sharing your wisdom and thoughts with us.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Well,
All
take
right.
care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nicole is a sincere, authentic, and a beautiful friend, and she offers some powerful wisdom in these 4 takeaways today. Number 1, you, my friend, have everything you need right now, in this moment, to do everything you need to do. Yes, you're on a journey, and if you know Jesus Christ, then God is with you right now. And the journey that you're on is the process of learning how to see things and how to see things clearly, to really know and trust that God is giving you all the tools you need to respond rightly in every situation, and that you have a choice to make. You can get better. You can heal, forgive, have healthy boundaries, and you can make sure that that past you have doesn't have to be your future. So you get to choose, my friend. Number 2, whatever you might have going on right now, be gentle. Be gentle with yourself and give yourself some time. Change takes time. And our culture today, unfortunately, does not help us cultivate patience. But if we trust the process and trust that God is doing something, focus on the victory He has already prepared for you, because He does have good plans for you and He will guide you. He will be with you on your journey. Number 3, adopt a positive self-advocate attitude for all things. For your health, for your business, for your kids, for your wife, or for your husband, and for your daily choices. And yes, even for your faith. No one knows what you need better than you. And when your needs are met and you're feeling strong and healthy and aligned well with God's plan, you will be even more powerful, my friend, to serve God, to serve your family, and to accomplish those life goals. So fight for yourself. Fight for yourself the way you'd fight for your kids or your nieces or nephews, or maybe your best friends. And if you don't have any of those, fight for yourself like you'd fight for your furry friends. It's worth it, my friend, to be a good self-advocate. And number 4, boundaries are the key to success in every area of life: mental health, physical health, financial, family, career, and faith. If you haven't read the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud, Nicole and I both highly recommend it. It will give your heart, mind, and soul the space that you need so you can be your own self-advocate, so you can carve out time for the Lord, so you are able to conquer those fears and accomplish your goals and make the difference in this life that you long to make. Boundaries are a critical foundation for your health and your success. Hey, thank you so much for listening in and watching today. And hey, if you haven't yet done this, please subscribe to our podcast and share it with a friend. Our world, especially right now, needs more encouragement, and I'd love your help to let others know about our show. You are amazing. Have a great week. God bless you, and we'll see you back here next time at the Sunshine Cafe.